from a perspective of the smart city marketplace and the intent of the action cluster to create an early adopter idea and to be a lead initiative, it's probably perfect time to gather together now and to identify a lead project and a lead initiative that we could drive this forward for our stakeholders in the smart city marketplace, and looking for alignment, of course, with the overall Gaia X initiative, so that we have a network-to-network cooperation at the end, ideally being implemented if everything works well. It's all about how do we finance something like a data space, a pan-European or European-wide data space initiative. We need to get this funded in order to ramp up. There are different ways on how the smart city marketplace could support that. It is a question of the business models. It's a question of what needs to be funded in terms of a public funding initiative or project, what could be financed already as part of a business model. And we should gather some ideas today in order to be prepared for the afternoon pitch, where we're going to discuss there what is the potential way forward. On the right-hand side, you could see the general architecture of Gaia X that you may have seen already in other areas and other occasions. And today the idea is to talk especially on the upper blue part of the structure of the architectural concept. Namely, we'd like to understand the concept of data spaces between the different stakeholders in mobility, and we're focusing on mobility, even though there are many others listed here. That's the purpose of this workshop. And secondly, we wanted to understand what kind of advanced services, advanced smart services, do you have in mind that we should address, particularly in the project proposal, but even beyond as part of the lead initiative, where you see that there is an opportunity for Europe, or there is a need that needs to be addressed in a collaborative way as the smart city marketplace and the action cluster could offer. Do we have proposals for some concrete advanced smart services?
Yeah, hello everybody. This is Olaf Bender speaking from Urban Mobility Institute, and I wanted to present one example. It has been mentioned in the introduction. I'm based here in Berlin, and Berlin is in Germany, so to say, the unofficial lab of shared mobility. So here is so many shared mobility providers active. You might have seen it, can imagine it, but at the same time, what we see in Germany is shared mobility providers bring their assets, their vehicles, let it be bikes or electric scooters or cars. They're bringing their assets to smaller cities, to medium-sized cities. So in a city up from 100,000 or to 150,000 inhabitants in Germany, you can be quite sure that there's at least one provider for shared vehicles, shared electric vehicles quite often. And in many cases, it's several providers. And from the perspective of a city, of course, it's interesting to, let's say, manage these transport providers. Let's say from a provider perspective, of course, it's most interesting to put the vehicles in the inner city center because there's the most need, there's most traffic, and the utilization is high, so they will make good money. From a city perspective, of course, it's interesting to have a link to public transport, so to ask the mobility provider to put the vehicles maybe a bit further apart from the city center. And how can this be managed? Having several mobility providers for scooters, for bikes, whatever, in place. And given the fact that, of course, each and every provider will not publish his data, will not publish the location of the vehicles. Maybe he will, but what he surely will not publish or share is the data of the utilization of these vehicles. But exactly this kind of data can be very interesting for a city to manage these vehicles, to manage the locations, to establish mobile hubs, to establish a better, let's say, alternative to the private car, to improve the mobility system, mobility offer in the city. And I think that's a pretty good example on how the Gaia X infrastructure could provide an opportunity, could provide an infrastructure for cities to better manage the existing and even yet to come shared mobility assets.
Welcome to this joint meeting between the Sustainable Districts Action Cluster and the Business Models Action Clusters of the Smart Cities Marketplace. We will work together today for 1.5 hours to try to shape the ideal positive energy district project. This is a very ambitious task. We will do our best. I don't know if most of you participated to the plenary session before to hear a bit about all these expectations. I think it's a very exciting project. We hope you will all participate very much. This is really important. For your information, for a little bit of history, when you come to the Action Cluster on Sustainable Districts, you're a bit in the cradle of the Positive Energy Districts, because one of our initiatives since 2015 started as the Positive Energy Blocks, based on an FP7 project, not even Horizon 2020. And so we are very excited to host this meeting, knowing that after all those years, a lot of information has been gathered. This is what is interesting. We start having a lot of information coming from 2 specific platforms. One is the SCC project that most of you must know, those smart cities projects, in particular the last years where the positive energy districts were a base of the calls, and the set plan implementation working group also on smart cities and positive energy districts. These are the 2 places where a lot of action is happening for the moment.
Mobility comes in because especially it is going to heavily interfere with what happens at the electricity pillar. Not only this, not only will we charge vehicles, we will also probably use vehicle batteries to charge back into buildings or into the grid at given moments when it's profitable. But we also have a shift in mobility as a concept in itself, which means that we are going much more away from the individual transport model to collective mobility opportunities, mobility as a service, multimodal trajectories, and so forth. And the same we see in the transport of goods. I mean, cities are also going under the charge of heavy freight traffic, of emissions, and so forth. And so you see also, for example, that there's new initiatives to concentrate urban freight logistics in hubs and then have, for example, small electric mobility vehicles dispatching freight through the city in a much more friendly, clean, and sustainable way. So these will interfere quite strongly in pet business cases.
Pleasure to meet everybody today. So I've actually put a proposal in the suggestions as part of this, but obviously not part of your initiative here, which is as a result of the work I've done at G20 and as an EU advisor to move the needle for smart cities. So all the evidence base has been taken from a global context and now has been repurposed for Europe. So I'm one of the EU's 4 fire starters. The intervention is on behalf of the citizens, and I've called the project Abode Analytics, but where it comes from is to move the needle between the fact that the retrofit is so slow and doesn't allow us to meet our climate ambitions. And so essentially we have technology that can be deployed ideally across portfolio buildings, and cities are the ideal place because each city has different buildings, but essentially can show the ambition or can show how we can save, and in cities it's been up to 50% of the energy used, so taking it from an energy efficiency point of view, but all of the technology is cloud only, but actually is fitted with sensors that are not intrusive to the fabric of the building. Usually it's the landlords or the owners of the building that are motivated, but actually the citizens have been participating because they want to see their city move towards a climate neutral city. So that's my the work that I've been doing, that I brought from the G20 into the European Commission.
Thank you very much, and I think it's really great to start with the retrofitting issues and the citizens, because these are two key words, of course. So thank you very much for this.
I'm the first one usually to point out the importance of linking the whole activities to aspects like quality of life and everything. But at the same time, I think it is really necessary to look at the regulatory frameworks that are provided by both on a national level and the local city level or regional level, depending on the country, to incentivize to create business cases for example, not only the individual owners, but the real estate developers in general, to be able to carry on this task. And I think although positive energy districts are very much referred to as a very local, neighborhood oriented thing, the national levels and the integration between the different levels is a highly important task that might need to be considered a bit more intensively, especially when it comes to providing the incentives for the actual stakeholders to carry on the process.
The challenge is, if we do lots of sequential pilots, then we won't achieve what's really required, which is scale improvements. We won't achieve the SDGs. So our challenge, should we wish to take it on board, is to try and figure out how we can take a simple solution like a lamppost and achieve the benefits of both energy savings, which is very bankable, and a whole bunch of different additional benefits. Okay, so we put a goal up there of upgrading 10 million smart lampposts. Now that doesn't mean, as I say, repeating that we move from old-fashioned luminaires to sexy lampposts with everything on it. What it does mean is that we're starting to actually manage the transition between old luminaires and new LED, connected lighting that allows you to trim and dim and optimize things, and then a variety of different services and value-added services that you put onto the light. And you'll do that as a network across a city. So we're all familiar with iPhones or smartphones. We're all familiar with Lego. And the idea here is to produce solutions which can be implemented rapidly, with confidence, at a reasonable price, and swiftly in the field. The concept of Lego is a nice metaphor to start thinking about packaging. If you could imagine that you had component-based interoperable solutions like Lego, as opposed to sequential piloting and pilotitis from cities where some uses Meccano, Geomag, Duplo, Lego, all sorts of different ways of doing things that start from first principles, which doesn't make sense if you've got a solution which is reasonably consistent. If you could think of Lego as the metaphor, then we can package up several smart city solutions. And that concept is something which has been absorbed by the Smart Cities Lighthouse programs, which is now 130 cities around Europe. And there was an agreement amongst the Board of Coordinators to look at 4 measures, 4 smart city solution areas to package up the solutions. They were an e-bike, social housing, because it's so large, urban data platforms, because all cities need better quality of data, and the smart lamppost. So there are 4 solutions that the Lighthouse community sought to package. Now, what's possibly in your mind is, oh, that means one size fits all, everybody must apply a standard, and we're all unique as cities. That's not the case. In fact, my floor here is strewn with Lego pieces because my son can come in and say he'll design it precisely as per the lid on the box, the picture on the lid of the box, do it quite quickly, or he can innovate. The point about Lego, or the metaphor there, is that packaging doesn't mean one size fits all. Packaging enables innovation and the development of new solutions, as well as making it quick, simple, and cheap.
So now I'm just going to quickly talk about the environment we're trying to do this in. And I think that to say that we're in the right place at the right time is an understatement. Everything the Commission has been doing in the last couple of years towards developing the new European model, recognising that we cannot go in the way we're already going. In the fact sheet which I had put together, how I described the existing business model really was in the old days you would get a man with a horse and cart and he would go around the streets asking for metal and textiles, etc. People would give them possibly valuable metals, valuable textiles, etc. And what they would get back in place would simply be a balloon or nothing. So basically, it's to readdress that the important value of personal data, it shouldn't be taken away, it should be used in a better way. And I think that essentially is the gist of the European model, to fairer distribute the wealth generated, including the citizens owning it and the locations where they live. And by reward, it could be in monetary terms. The technology will add those marketplace, having the ability to pay directly for the data, or else it could be in improved services, or it could be in rewards for transport, etc., or pure altruism in perhaps sharing health data, for example.
First of all, we can mention the privacy-preserving schemes reflecting user preferences that need to be embedded in a urban data sharing platform. And so with systems and functionalities capable of ensuring digital twins, personas, and things like that. Then, of course, it is really important to adopt the privacy and security by design and by default paradigm, which means to have the privacy principle to be considered since the very beginning of the design of the technological solution. And at the same time, to have the privacy settings and the default settings. Then we can mention some aspect of informed consent. We need a solution, technological solution, capable of ensuring granularity of the consent withdrawal, the need to avoid consent fatigue for the user, the multiple purposes of the consent, and so on and so forth. Then in a urban data sharing platform, we need to consider compensation mechanism, which can be both monetary and not monetary, but should be conceived both as a reward for sharing data as an incentive for future sharing additional data.
And so you need to plan for the energy, you need to plan for the water, you need to plan for the mobility. So, and you have a lot of different institutions as well that are outside the boundaries of the cities. The national entities for pollution, the national entity for the roads. You have also a lot of data to visualize, and they're also in silos. Yes. And having digital twins breaks the silos because you can put your you put it's like an island or an inn. You put everything inside the digital twin and you can show to everybody. And so everybody can bring this data and show it. That's ready. And you can also see future projects of infrastructure. like bridges, as mentioned. It's like bridges and tunnels. And what will be the effect of this infrastructure for the citizens? For example, lately we had a big problem with windmills that were planted on an island where you have birds, rare birds that live. 10 years, and there was a big problem for citizens right now because they didn't understand 10 years ago that those windmills were coming, but then they came, and then there was this crisis. But if you could have the citizen during this planning process, they could be more involved, and you have less crisis with the police or with the entrepreneurs. So it saves time and money. Okay, and as Annemie said before, we don't know exactly how much money we save by doing this process because we haven't measured that, and it takes not more than 2 years. This windmill project was planned 10 years ago. So and it's difficult to have this experience over many years. So it needs long time planning, I guess, at least.